From Isaiah, the prophet of God, in chapter 43, on verse 5 through 7. This is the Lord speaking, of course. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bring your offspring from the east, and from the west I will gather you. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not withhold them. Bring my sons from afar, and my daughters from the ends of the earth. Everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory, whom I have formed and made. And we're going to do that. We're going to call all of those who God has called by his name from the east and the west and the north and the south. And we're going to do that by blowing the shofar. And the shofar, the call that we're going to use, the shofar has 4 different blows, or 4 different reasons for calling. But the call that we're going to do is a call to gather in, a call to bring the people in. And because we're only blowing one, we're calling in the leaders, those who God has called by his name. It's not everybody. It's not those who God has called, it's not those who have called themselves by his name. See, the difference between God calling someone by his name and somebody calling themselves by his name is the distance between heaven and hell. And so we want to call in those who God has called by his name, the leaders, to call them in, to raise them up, to come into the kingdom from wherever they're at, from the east and from the west and from the north and from the south, to call them in at this time. There'll be a time when we will call everyone. But right now we're calling in the leaders to rise up, to bring in those people, but the leaders first, that they might show us which way to go, as they follow first Messiah and submit to him. So from the east, to the west, to the north, and to the south. Now, blowing the shofar is not to be taken lightly. It is a holy weapon. Again, I go back and say that in Revelation, the writer of Revelation in 4:1 says that the voice that I first heard was like the sound of the shofar. That sound that you hear is when Messiah comes back and you hear the trumpets. It's talking, I believe it's talking about that shofar, the blowing of the great shofar. So we have called them in. We're calling them in now in a prophetic manner, but I believe that it is the right time in which to bring these leaders in. And I want to just give me a second to get this up. Get my notes up. It won't take long. There we go. So it is a prophetic time, and the Spirit of Christ is prophecy, it says. So we're really bringing God and ushering God to come in a special way, and asking Messiah to come. And I like to just say warmest greetings of shalom, shalom to the hearers and the hearers of my voice, as well as the seers of my radio face. And I just wanted to thank God for My King's TV and allowing me to be here and to bring forth some truth. But we know that God is not a man that he should lie. But I'm a man. I'm a human. And there is only one truth. And there's only one way, and there's only one light. So if you hear truth today, you need to really know in your heart who is speaking to you. In the very essence of your being, who is really talking to you? Put away the images of flesh and blood and of the voice of that, but know who is really talking to you, who is calling you, who cares enough to speak to you that you might have life. And every day is a Havdalah moment. Every day is a moment to distinguish between what is holy and unholy. Every day is a time to distinguish between life and death. And the bottom line is, you will choose. One way or another, you will choose. And so it's the time now to choose Jesus. To choose Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah. I want to go back to Isaiah 56 and 6, and it says, "And the foreigners who join themselves to the Lord." Foreigners. Well, we'll look at that in a minute. "And to the foreigners who join themselves to the Lord to minister to him," the Lord, "to love the name of the Lord, and to be his servants, all who keep the Sabbath and do not profane it, and to hold my covenant." Well, we see that when he said all foreigners, he wasn't just talking about Israel. The foreigners were those that were not of Israel that he was talking about. So there is a special call that this message is also for the Gentiles as well. And we're going to look at a variety of different scriptures throughout. The rest of Isaiah 56 with verse 7, and this is really what I want to get to. It says, "These I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted by me on my altar. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people." What I want to talk about is understanding the time and the season we walk in and building the Lord's house. And some pastors and some theology isn't going to really like what I'm going to tell you, because man's way says it has to be this way or that way. It can't be both. But the God that I serve is big enough to do both. That we too can be his house, but also there is a time, and God and even Jesus in the New Testament was talking about the brick and the mortar and the cement and the wood and the chairs as being the house of God. And so many times that in this time, in this age that we live, we come in with our Starbucks coffee or a soft drink, and we come in a very casual manner. I've even seen assistant pastors and pastors jump up with their shoes on and put it on the chairs while they're talking to somebody. You wouldn't do it in my house. Why would that be acceptable in the house of God? And we wonder about why there is no reverence for God in this country. There's a few. God always has his few. So we're going to talk about building the house of God and bringing about a balance between the two. In verse 8 it says, "Thus is the Lord who gathers the outcast of Israel." So we're going back also with the Israelites and everyone else. "I will gather others to them besides those already gathered." So we see that it's Israel and those that are residents, those that are grafted in. Pardon me. Jeremiah 7:9 says, "Will you steal and murder, commit adultery and perjury, burning incense to Baal and following the gods that you do not know? And then come before me in this house which bears my name." And come before me in this house which bears my name and say, "We are safe to do these detestable things, to do whatever I want to." I can come in shorts. God knows what I look like. He knows that my clothes are only filthy rags. It really doesn't matter. He doesn't care. Has this house, which bears my name, says the Lord, become a den of robbers to you? But I have been watching, declares the Lord. He doesn't slumber sleep. He still sees what we are doing to his house. And many times we're bringing, because we profane the house of God and don't come in a holy manner, in a reverent manner, with fear and trembling before God, who can destroy both the spirit and the soul, we come and pervert his house and then wonder why we're in such bad shape. The sanctuary is a place to be sanctified, to be set apart. Not to be an all-purpose room to do whatever you have to do. It's a sanctuary. It's a place where after the week of work and toil and tear and all the stuff that comes, that we can come in and rest. And just rest and let the Lord wrap his arms around us and just rest in his arms, in safety and in his sanctuary. In a place that is holy, where the tears are wiped away. But we come not keeping it holy, not keeping it sanctified. Matthew 21. It talks about Yeshua that he cleanses the temple. When Yeshua, that's Jesus' Hebrew name, entered the temple and drove out all who were selling and buying in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he said to them, "It is written." He didn't say Isaiah. He says, "It is written," because they were studying it. They knew what the word of God was. And it was written where he says, "My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you're making it a den of robbers." In John 1, the next day, John saw Yeshua coming down and declared,